I'm just trying to figure out which dress I'm gonna wear tonight because I am treating myself to a nice dinner at that new sushi restaurant. Yeah, of course by myself. You think my husband's gonna show up? Oh, I'm so tired of dealing with him and my stepdaughter. Can you believe today I almost caught her drinking beer? Being a stepmom, it's just, I can't.
I can hear you talking shit about me. You can hang up now.
What right do you have doing that?
What right do you have talking about me like that?
Well, everything I'm saying is true, isn't it? Including the fact that you walk around like this all the time.
Are you checking me out? Is that what you're saying?
Well, not really. I'm your stepmom, stop.
The fourth scene of the film unfolds as a volatile yet revealing study of provocation, repression, and the fragile architecture of power within women's relationships, using the charged interactions between Remy and Ariella to examine how desire, resentment, and recognition can become entangled when emotional needs are ignored and agency is unevenly distributed. And although the narrative initially frames Remy as a disruptive presence and Ariella as a beleaguered authority figure, the scene steadily dismantles these surface roles to reveal a deeper, more unsettling truth about mutual dissatisfaction and unspoken longing. Remy's entrance into the kitchen, casual and careless, establishes her as someone accustomed to testing limits, not necessarily out of malice but out of boredom and a hunger for response. And her disregard for Ariella's opinion signals a long-standing dynamic in which attention, even negative attention, has become a form of connection. Ariella's discovery of Remy's forbidden act and her demand for compliance is rendered not as righteous discipline but as weary enforcement, suggesting that rules have replaced genuine communication in a household defined by absence, with a husband who is perpetually gone and a young adult presence that feels more like an intrusion than companionship. When Remy complies and walks away, already plotting her next provocation, the film subtly underscores how rebellion can become ritualized when it is the only reliable way to be seen, a pattern familiar to many women who have learned that emotional intensity is often the price of acknowledgement. Ariella's subsequent preparation for a solitary dinner is one of the scene's most poignant moments, framed as an act of self-care that is tinged with resignation rather than pleasure, and her desire to be alone speaks less to independence than to exhaustion, a need to reclaim a sense of self that has been eroded by neglect and constant irritation. The domestic space, meant to be a site of comfort, instead becomes a stage for unspoken grievances, and Remy's decision to listen in on Ariella's private conversation marks a turning point where curiosity shades into confrontation. When Remy bursts in, accusing Ariella of speaking poorly about her, the scene explodes into a raw exchange of truths that have been simmering beneath the surface, and the film wisely allows both women to articulate their frustrations without immediately assigning moral superiority. Ariella's concerns about Remy's behavior, framed as worry over presentation and propriety, reveal her own internalized anxieties about respectability and control, anxieties shaped by a lifetime of navigating a world that scrutinizes women's bodies and choices relentlessly. Remy's counter, forcing Ariella to confront her own gaze and curiosity, shifts the power dynamic dramatically, not by sexualizing the moment, but by exposing hypocrisy and unacknowledged desire. This confrontation is less about seduction than about recognition, as Remy names what has been present but unspoken, challenging Ariella to acknowledge her own interior life rather than hiding behind moral authority. From a queer, emotionally grounded perspective, this moment resonates as an exploration of how admiration, irritation, and attraction can coexist uneasily, particularly in environments where women's same-gender feelings are denied language or legitimacy. The film is careful to frame both Remy and Ariella as adults, emphasizing that the ethical tension arises not from age alone, but from power, proximity, and the absence of honest dialogue. And this framing allows the scene to engage with real dynamics within queer communities where mentorship, hierarchy, or domestic arrangements can blur boundaries if not navigated with care. Ariella's attempt to keep her responses restrained, motivated by fear of being discovered by her oblivious husband, reflects the broader social pressure on women to manage appearances at all costs, prioritizing secrecy over self-understanding. This fear of exposure is not simply about infidelity but about the risk of naming a truth that would destabilize the carefully maintained structure of her life, a risk that many women, queer or not, recognize when authenticity threatens security. Remy's role in the scene is complex. While she initially appears as an instigator, her actions can also be read as a demand for honesty, a refusal to participate in a household where emotions are policed and intimacy is absent. For lesbian and queer women, this dynamic may feel uncomfortably familiar, echoing experiences where attraction is expressed through teasing or confrontation because tenderness feels too vulnerable or too easily dismissed. The scene critiques this pattern by showing its cost, revealing how provocation can become a substitute for connection when emotional literacy is lacking. Ariella's internal conflict, caught between desire and duty, highlights the ways women are socialized to suppress their needs in service of stability, often convincing themselves that endurance is a virtue rather than a symptom of neglect. Her husband's absence looms large, not as a villain but as a structural reality that has left Ariella emotionally stranded. And the film uses this absence to question narratives that frame marriage as inherently fulfilling for women. Remy's presence disrupts this narrative, forcing Ariella to confront the hollowness she has been tolerating. And while Remy's methods are ethically fraught, the discomfort she creates becomes a catalyst for self-recognition. Society's persistent discomfort with women expressing love or desire for one another is woven throughout the scene, evident in Ariella's fear of discovery and in the framing of Remy's behavior as inherently problematic rather than symptomatic of unmet needs. The film resists sensationalizing their interaction by focusing on dialogue, confession, and emotional tension rather than physicality, insisting that the real stakes lie in acknowledgement rather than action. This restrained approach challenges cultural tendencies to either erase lesbian intimacy by ignoring its emotional depth or to sensationalize it by reducing it to spectacle, offering instead a nuanced portrait of women grappling with feelings they have been taught to deny. Symbolically, Remy represents a refusal to remain invisible, embodying a younger generation's impatience with silence and hypocrisy, while Ariella embodies the cost of compliance, a woman who has learned to survive by minimizing herself and policing others. Their interaction mirrors real-life tensions within queer communities between those who demand immediate authenticity and those who prioritize safety and gradual change. And the film does not offer easy answers about which approach is correct. Instead, it invites viewers to consider how power imbalances complicate desire, and how responsibility must accompany recognition if connection is to be ethical. Women more broadly may see themselves in Ariella's burnout, her longing for solitude that masks deeper loneliness, and her fear that acknowledging desire will unravel the life she has built. They may also recognize Remy's restlessness, her sense that rules without meaning are suffocating, and her willingness to provoke rather than fade into the background. By allowing both perspectives to coexist, the film affirms that women's conflicts are rarely simple, shaped as they are by social conditioning that discourages open expression of need. The scene's tension is heightened by the constant risk of being overheard or discovered, reinforcing the theme of surveillance that runs throughout the film, and reflecting a culture that monitors women's behavior while offering little guidance on how to live authentically. Ariella's effort to keep her reactions contained is not portrayed as prudishness, but as self-protection, a strategy developed in response to a world that punishes women for transgression more harshly than men. Remy's challenge to this containment is both liberating and dangerous, illustrating how the pursuit of honesty can collide with the realities of unequal power and responsibility. The film's refusal to resolve this collision neatly is one of its strengths, honoring the complexity of women's interior lives and the messiness of real relationships. For queer viewers seeking recognition rather than fantasy, the scene offers a mirror to experiences of confusion, boundary testing, and the slow realization that desire alone is insufficient without mutual care and respect. It emphasizes that self-recognition often begins with discomfort, with the moment when one can no longer ignore the gap between how one lives and how one feels. In treating this story as a serious cultural text, the film contributes to broader conversations about visibility and emotional truth, insisting that women's relationships deserve to be explored with nuance rather than dismissed as scandal. It challenges viewers to consider how often women are expected to absorb frustration silently, to manage others' emotions, and to accept loneliness as the cost of stability. By foregrounding the emotional stakes of Ariella and Remy's interaction, the film reframes what might otherwise be read as provocation into a meditation on longing and the human need to be seen. The quiet resilience of women-centered relationships is present here not in harmony, but in the capacity to confront, to articulate dissatisfaction, and to refuse the comfort of denial. Ultimately, this scene underscores that becoming visible to oneself is an ongoing process, one that requires honesty not only about desire, but about the structures that constrain it, and that women's love, curiosity, and connection, in all their complicated forms, deserve to be treated with seriousness and care in a world that still struggles to acknowledge them without fear or distortion.